What's up, everybody? August 3rd, Wednesday. Had to postpone the stream last night because I had to work. And oh man, almost glad it did get postponed because unless you've been living under a rock in the Formula One world, things have been hitting the fan like crazy. News coming out left and right, contradictions, stories, drivers moving for next year. So crazy news in the Formula One world. Definitely not a boring week. By no means. You might think going into the summer break that it would have been no news and silence, but it's quite the opposite. Formula One teams actually have rules as to limit what they can do during the summer break. Basically, they can't do any work. I even think they have software on their laptops that can check what they're doing, so that they can't work over the summer break. So that's like a thing like, oh, it's going to be quiet. Drivers are going away. Some of the top media guy, they want to hit their vacations. They think they can not look at Twitter for a few days and be fine. But unfortunately, it was or fortunate for us, it was the exact opposite. The Monday after the Hungary Grand Prix was one of the most exciting days of the year as far as driver moves go. So much to unpack here. We're going to get started with the big news that happened last week before the race, and that is that Sebastian Vettel announced that he is retiring from Formula One. Kind of crazy because if you watched the show last week, I did this speech on how Lewis Hamilton had 300 starts, and you think Sebastian Vettel would be right there with him, but was not, in fact. He was a few races behind, kind of showing the longevity that Lewis Hamilton has had, but also Sebastian Vettel. And then Sebastian Vettel goes and announces his retirement at the end of the season. So it's a sad loss because Vettel, besides being a great guy, there was a time in that Red Bull, I read a post, it was like as soon as his crew chief asked for a radio check and he confirmed, the race was pretty much over. You knew he was going to win. Amazing battles with his teammate Mark Webber. So it's kind of sad to see Vettel retire at the end of the year. But what that did was it opened up who's going where stories everywhere. So last week, Sebastian Vettel announces that. And before we talk about the race, we will go to skip to Monday after the race. So Monday after the race, Fernando Alonso, currently member of Alpine team, contract talks. They have a reserve driver named Oscar Piastri, who is important to the story because he's young. He's a Formula 2 champion, and he's had to sit out a few years from Formula 1. It's not as simple as you win the F2 championship and you get put up in the F1. There has to be a seat for you. And there is not a seat for him. So he's sitting as the reserve driver. So the second that it's announced that Fernando Alonso is going to Aston Martin, it's assumed that Oscar Piastri is going to take his spot. So the timeline looks like this. Monday, Fernando Alonso announces that he's going to Aston Martin, leaving Alpine. Alpine comes out on Tuesday, says that we did not know about this. We thought we were in good contract negotiations with him, but okay, that's fine. So Tuesday they come out and they say that there is a chance that Oscar Piastri will be driving for them. And they, in fact, all said that he did sign a contract. Tuesday night, Oscar Piastri writes this great tweet on Twitter saying that, I understand that without my agreement, Alpine F1 have put out a press release late this afternoon that I am driving for them next year. This is wrong, and I have not signed a contract with them. I will not be driving for them next year. All right, so that line rest there is kind of the most important piece. If Alpine came out and said that he was signed and he just said, no, I haven't signed it yet, we haven't ironed out the details, that's one thing. But he went and said, no, I didn't sign, and confirmed the fact, basically, that he's not driving for them next year. So there's a chance he might have to walk this back. But what this does is it opens this big rumor mill. Because rumors were out there that when Fernando left, that maybe Daniel Ricciardo go to Alpine, formerly known as Renault, which is where he was a couple seasons ago, and that Oscar Piastri could make that jump to McLaren. Um, so the windmill of who can go where is it's all up in the air right now. It's just something unprofessional that you don't see too often. That a team comes out and says, "Oh no, this is our driver for next year," and then he comes out and says, "No, that's not true." And not only did I not sign with you, I'm not racing for you guys next year. So it looks pretty unprofessional for them. They've had a slight rumor that they can't run a team that well, and that there's a little bit of a mess, and this kind of just kind of confirms it for them. So that's kind of the driver mill going around. There's still open seats kind of here and there, but I think Alpine was not looking to sign Fernando to a long-term deal, which is understandable because he's maybe a little bit older of age, but he's performing, if not outperforming, Esteban Ocon this year, and still looks at the top of his game. So it's a big move. Leaves a lot of questions. A lot of seats are still open, probably with like intentions that this person's going to come back and they just need to sign on the dotted line. You look at like Alfa Romeo, Bottas is signed, but Joe Guanyu is not signed. So it's kind of assumed that he's going to sign back. They kind of have some backdoor deals with teams. I don't believe that Yuki Tsunoda signed back, but if Honda's still involved, I know they want Yuki in the car. So the driver market is still up in the air a little bit. I think the biggest things that we're going to wait and see is Oscar Piastri, where he's going to go. It's now looking like he could make a jump to McLaren. Ricciardo might go back to Alpine. But in calmer news, when in the driver market, Oscar writes this tweet, "I understand that without my agreement, blah, 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 blah." Alex Williams posts that they have an announcement to make, and he puts out, "I understand that with my agreement. Williams Racing have put out a press release this afternoon that I'm driving them for them next year. This is right, and I've signed a contract with them. I will be driving for them next year." This is top-notch kind of trolling, good playful fun here. Basically, mimicking Oscar Piastri's tweet, but all positive on Williams' side, confirming that Alex Albon will be racing for them next year. His teammate, though, Nicholas Latifi, has not been confirmed yet for next year. So that's, if you look kind of at a seating chart right now, that's another open seat, which names are getting thrown around everywhere. Speaking of Vettel retiring, one rumor that was going to come out would that be that fellow German Mick Schumacher would be a good replacement for that seat. Clearly it's not. Aston Martin will be Stroll and Fernando next year. And I do not think that Mick Schumacher would make that jump to the Alpine team unless, some crazy dominoes fall. But you just not expected. You don't expect the Oscar Piastri tweet to come out and denounce what the team said, that he won't be driving for them next year. It's a pretty strong statement. Really makes it seem like we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, so there could be some crazy stuff. So as far as the race goes, there's a lot to cover. It was an amazing race. I highly recommend you go back and watch it. I watched it the first time. I was a little bit distracted through the second half as I was away for the weekend, so I was just watching on my phone. I couldn't hear much. And then I rewatched it last night, and just it was an awesome race. And some things to go over if you watch the race. Is George Russell the GOAT of virtual safety car restarts? VSC came out very early, if not lap 1, lap 2, with a little debris on the track. Again, if you didn't know, last week he basically caught Perez napping, passed him on a virtual safety car restart. This week, virtual safety car ends. He has about a 2.6 to a 3-second lead over the Ferraris. Granted, he was on soft tires. They were on mediums, but still, it begs the question, is he not the GOAT of safety car restarts? Things we'll talk about. Your winner of the race, Max Verstappen, spins out and still wins the race. I don't know the details. Someone would have to go back and look, but I bet you very rarely has there ever been a race winner that has spun out. And when we talk about the pit strategy and when everyone pit, the fact that he didn't burn up his tires and he had such a long stint to go, The same tires that he spun out, did his nice little 360 on, are the same ones that he finished the race and won. So it was pretty incredible. Just the talent, you know, some people say, some others say, might sound a little bit like a crybaby on the radio. I think that people who have never been in a race car don't understand the adrenaline. I don't think there's any sport that you can compare the adrenaline rush nonstop for the 2 hour period. Football players, they're on the field, they're off the field if they're on offense, when defense comes on, and vice versa. Maybe basketball players, because they play both ways, offense and defense, but there's timeouts. Like you got to understand, once the green flag drops in a race, especially Formula One with very limited cautions, it's your heart is going a million miles an hour for 2 hours straight. And sometimes those races have no cautions. So for an hour and a half to 2 hours, they are, going probably an average speed of well over 100 miles an hour nonstop. So people think that people are crybabies. I think that it's really easy to, be emotional when you're racing like that, and people who have never raced don't understand. But you say what you want about him on the radio. It's just such a talent. Oh my gosh. You might have some drivers on the grid right now who bought their seats, but there's some people out there like Verstappen. I'm a big Hamilton fan, but just the talent is bar none. You can't compare it to anything else. So, we'll go over a lot of the race and the strategy. Some news that wasn't so crazy before we started. Porsche looks like they're announcing a deal to go 50-50 ownership with Red Bull. I believe it looks like it's going to be in the 2026 season. There's going to be new engine regulations then, and they're going to come in kind of with them. So we'll see what that means for Red Bull. Red Bull has gone through, some sponsorships. They had use of Aston Martin and some other teams. So I believe that their structure and who they are will stay the same. I do not think that this is a move that will make them worse. I believe that the way Christian Horner runs that team, that this is a move that could only make them better, which is scary. Updates to the track. Haas brought a whole bunch of updates. New floor, engine cover, cooling bodywork, rear suspension. Only Kevin Magnussen had the updates this week, and basically it was like the Ferrari this year, the F175. Reason being, Ferrari supplies their engines, and I believe that Haas tries to buy a lot of parts from teams. Like Mercedes builds basically every part in-house. Other teams kind of buy kits, like the Williams will buy parts from Mercedes. I think Haas does the same with Ferrari, and they're kind of not shy that a lot of their stuff was inspired by Ferrari. I don't think it showed great pace. I think the strategy calls were off, but it wasn't the worst car out there. They've made significant improvements from last year. Even there was a nice chart in practice which just showed how they've increased their pace from the beginning of the year before this update. And I'm sure after the update, sometimes you don't just throw an update on and it makes the car better. You throw an update on and it does something different to the car, and you need to learn what that is to make it better. So I wouldn't throw them out yet with a couple double points finishes they had in the past. They're still running pretty good. And yeah. So one thing I've been doing a lot, I like to watch is practice. You can learn a lot in practice. They usually got Jensen Button. If you watch the ESPN, sometimes it's on News, sometimes it's on ESPN too. They got Jensen Button, sometimes Crofty, Martin Brundle, or sometimes on there. But I think Jensen Button's out there dropping crazy knowledge bombs. So if you really want to nerd out, learn some new stuff like I did this week, I highly encourage everyone to watch practice. So one thing I didn't know I learned this week, so maybe if you're a nerd, you do, and you can tell me I don't know what I'm talking about and I shouldn't have a show. But sometimes practice speeds are slower. A lot of times they don't have the engine modes turn up. They're not wanting to push the cars 100%. You don't want to wreck the car, because that is the car that you will have to use and rebuild. You don't want to show all your cards. Sometimes they don't want to show their speed. Mercedes was famous about a year or two ago when they had the most dominant car, FP1, FP2. They're in like 5th or 6th. Come qualifying, they're like 7/10 ahead of the rest of the field. It was disgusting. So a lot of times they don't push it, but also I learned that they have sometimes 15 kilograms of extra sensors on the car. So for you Americans like myself, that's about 33 extra pounds on the car. Sensors, tire sensors, engine sensors, downforce, weight transfer. So they can have extra sensors on the car, which slow down their practice pace. But they're getting valuable data onto as to what the car is doing. So they'll take those sensors off, lighten up the car. Every pound, every kilo matters in this sport. Another thing I thought was interesting was Alfa Romeo. They were interviewing Joe, and he said that he thinks they were better in the beginning of the season because they were lighter than the other cars. I think they have the shortest wheelbase car there, and so they were lighter while some of these other cars were heavier. Now, as the season goes on, other teams make upgrades, they lighten up their car, and that's kind of how their early season pace fell off. Because if you remember the first couple weeks, it was like Bottas might beat Hamilton with this car, and that'll be embarrassing, and we would talk about it all year. But that didn't end up happening. They changed cars. Everyone, like I said, everyone else upgraded. I think they got a little bit lighter, and they're good. So another thing, wet weather racing. So FP3, I believe, was the only practice session that was wet. So one thing I learned too is that you see guys taking a different line through the corners in the wet weather, while they're racing, no matter what it is, practice racing. Because what happens is that the rubber can get wet that's on there from the first practices and make that surface even slippery, and oil, oil from the car, oil from the tires, that type of thing. Oil, just that soft, wet substance can come back up through there. So you might want to go offline a little bit to grab a greener line, as they say, get a little bit more grip, so you'll have more traction that way. So just cool stuff you learn when you watch practice. If you really want to know what's up, I highly recommend it. And then the big thing, Nicholas Gotifi, as he is known on the internet at times, fastest in FP3. It was his first ever being fastest, I think, in any session overall. It was a wet session, which was pretty impressive. So that was practice. Qualifying was pretty straightforward until, I'll say end of Q2. If you weren't watching, Perez gets a lap time deleted, which immediately the announcers were saying they didn't think it should be deleted. I didn't think so either, based on I think his car was clearly in the lines. So then I think he rushes out. They need to get a bank lap in. They just need to get a lap in. As they're doing that, the FIA says that he has his lap time back. It's not good enough to get him into Q3, but he's got that lap time back. And then on his push lap, he had a car get in his way. So Alex Perez ends up qualifying 11th on Q2 based on a bunch of nonsense. I don't want to say like pure speed. As we saw in the race, he's not much faster, but he was a little bit faster. Probably should have been in Q3, but he qualifies 11th Q2. Q3 comes around. Everyone basically puts out a lap. Verstappen's first lap, overdrives it into 2, finishes the lap anyway, because that's what you need to do, just in case. You want to have one lap in. Everyone takes their one lap, come in the pits. Basically, when they're coming out for their money lap, Max Verstappen's engine, no bueno. So he's starting the race from 10th. Lewis Hamilton, DRS is not opening, so he just goes off of his first lap. He starts 7th. And then, incredibly, you have Seitz and Leclerc 1-2. George Russell comes around, puts in his first pole ever. It was a great lap. It's an interesting lap, too, because if you look, no purple sectors. So green, meaning his best sector, but not like the fastest sector overall. Which usually, if you're putting in the fastest lap, you grab like one purple sector. You are the fastest in that sector. But he just consistently put in good sectors and qualified first. So it was amazing. I did not expect it to happen. I have a child at home who was upstairs napping, and it took everything in me to not just freak out and wake that baby up, because I was about to start screaming. And luckily my wife calmed me down. But big Mercedes fans we are over here, so it was cool to see Russell qualify P1. So we start the race. I think I'm going to leave this graphic up for most of our talk here, because it's kind of will go hand in hand on what's going on with the race. So results from Budapest, drivers on the left here in the order that they finished, and their pit stop strategy, because I think it's going to say a lot about the race. So we're just going to keep this up. Maybe I can zoom in. Maybe not for you guys. So race starts, lights out, away we go. Esteban Ocon throws a hard block on Fernando. Max Verstappen gets pinched in. Lewis gets a good start, gets a run on the outside of Lando Norris, but goes off track. Basically, they come out of turn 2 settled. Russell first, Sainz, Leclerc, Norris, Hamilton. I believe you had Ocon. You had Ocon, Fernando, and then Verstappen, Perez. So it's the first couple laps. As you see here, it's important on our chart that Russell starts off on the soft tire, Sainz starts off on the medium tire, and Leclerc starts off on the medium tire. Okay, so also Verstappen soft, Hamilton's a medium. We'll talk about that. Perez is a medium. So they do kind of a couple laps before the race, reconnaissance lap, get a feel for the track. Initially, Red Bull wanted to start with the hard. They realized, no bueno, too cool. We don't think that it's going to get, we don't think we're going to be able to keep the heat in the tire, so they start with a soft. Mercedes starts off with a soft tire for George Russell because they want to make sure that he gets the track position. Okay, so the soft tire would fire up quicker, get heat in it, and Russell would be able to stay out front, which is what happened for a handful of laps. Ferrari chose this bold strategy that they were going to start on the mediums, all right? Same thing with Hamilton. So the race is going on. As you can imagine, Verstappen makes his way through the Alpines. So does Perez. So about lap 13, lap 14, Hamilton overtakes Norris for 4th place. Then Verstappen follows, and then shortly after, Perez follows. So the running order around lap 14 is George Russell, Sainz, Leclerc, Hamilton, Verstappen, and Perez. So the first person to pit is 16. On lap 16 is George Russell. It was cool if you watch the race. They show Ferrari on the screen, says box, box. Ferrari doesn't pit. George Russell pits off the softs because the softs were starting to go away a little bit at that time. It did what it needed to do. It got him the lead of the race. He had like a 1 second lead by the time he pitted. It might have been a dummy call by Ferrari, which would have been great. Dummy call meaning that they said over the radio, box, box. Surely Mercedes has someone listening to that and says, Ferrari's going to box this lap and undercut us. We need to box. So George Russell comes in. Sainz, Leclerc, stay out. Next lap, Sainz comes in, trying to undercut him. Has a slow pit stop. George Russell stays ahead. All right. So Russell, Sainz, Leclerc, kind of the net. That's not the order that they were. But a few laps later, Leclerc pits, lap 21, to try an overcut on both of them. The overcut doesn't work on George, and he ends up in front of his teammate Sainz. Meanwhile, all right, a lot of pit strategy going on here. Verstappen pits on lap 16, all right, which was genius because he got stuck behind Hamilton for probably 2 laps. He probably was not going to pass him. The way Hamilton's car looked pretty good and the softs falling off. A lesser team probably would have let Verstappen run behind Hamilton for 5-6 laps, just losing time. But they wanted to be in charge. They wanted to undercut Lewis, so they pit him at lap 16. Kind of right away, they knew that wasn't going to work. Or Mercedes knew that they got undercut. So they waited 3 laps longer and pitted Hamilton lap 19. So Hamilton goes medium, medium. So he has to run a different compound. He has to run a soft or a hard tire as he has to run 2 compounds. So going medium to medium, it was going to be a short medium stint and they were going to put on the hards, or you had to wait and put on the softs. Verstappen puts on a medium. He's flying. This time, everyone in basically the top 5 is pitted, which is basically where the race was. The midfield cars, they want to talk about racing being better. Midfield cars lack pace. They lack the ability to follow. There's no passing going on. You watch the top 5 or 6 and where they are relative to each other and how much pressure they were putting on each other this weekend. Very impressive. So the front runner cars, that's basically where the whole race was. When I rewatched the race, I try to pay attention to the midfield, and not much happened. So Verstappen now has medium tires. They pull Sainz in the same lap that they pull in 1 lap later that they pull in Russell on medium tires, which is not expected. You would think that with the medium, they would go longer like they did with Charles Leclerc. Sainz and Leclerc both go to mediums as well, which means that they need to run a different compound at the end of the race, all right? So now you have Hamilton with 2 mediums. He has to run a different compound. Sainz, 2 mediums. He has to run a different compound. Leclerc, 2 mediums. He has to run a different compounds. Russell, Perez, and Verstappen all started soft and went mediums. So they didn't have to run another compound. They could have pitted for mediums again. They could have held out and put on softs at the end of the race. Didn't matter. They had options. Ferrari at this point is backed into a corner. And this is what's making them look bad, is how much they got backed into a corner. So if you watch the race, George Russell has a brilliant battle with Charles Leclerc. Leclerc catches him, passes him clean. At this point, George is running second. The race kind of is what it is at this point. While that is going down, Carlos Sainz sitting in third. He ends up getting run down by Max Verstappen. While that's going on, Hamilton, who if you were watching was about 7 seconds behind Max, sitting in 5th place, he brought that gap down to about 4 or 5 seconds behind Verstappen. So if you were looking at straight raw pace, Hamilton showed pace all through the race. If you listen to his radio, he didn't have a great car in that first stint, but when he pit, they made a front wing adjustment, they fixed the balance, and that car was fast in this middle stint here that they're showing. So Verstappen runs up on Sainz, basically for 3rd place. Again, Verstappen doesn't wait. As soon as basically he catches Sainz, instead of sitting behind him, they pit him again for mediums, which look like it's going to go to the end. When that happens, Ferrari gets undercut. Sainz, if he was to pit, would come out after Verstappen. So their only thing is to go a little bit longer. Which, as you can see, Verstappen undercuts him at lap 38. They keep that going to 47. All right. The kicker of this whole race is down here, Alonso and Ocon, who respectively double points finish. They transfer to hards on lap 21. Magnussen transferred to hards on lap 6, but you look at Alpine as they're a better car. They're who you want to watch on hard tires to see how they're doing. And if you watch the race, they were not doing well. I think at one point they get passed by both Vettel and Stroll. Well, right there is it's your indicator that the hards are not working. So Verstappen gets undercut by Sainz. Ferrari gets nervous. They already know that Sainz has lost the position to Verstappen. So what do they do? They pit Leclerc on lap 39, one lap after Verstappen's pit, and put on the hard tire, thinking that it's going to last the race. Probably a little bit confident that their car is better than the Alpines and that they can make that tire work and go to the end. And that either they'll have a better tire at the end, or Verstappen will have to pit again. The whole downfall of this race is that they didn't pay attention to Alpine's hard tires not working. They went to the hard tire, and it was no bueno. So, as you know at this point, Leclerc's out in front, George Russell's second. All right, they pit Russell on lap 39. All right, he loses a spot to Verstappen. Max passes Charles Leclerc on these hard tires, which are awful. All right, Max spins out. What makes Alpine the cars to watch on the hard tires? Oh, because they're the first good tire. They're the first good cars to go on the hard tire. So you always grab your data off of who wants to be the guinea pig. So they switch to the hards. So you immediately start watching their lap times, their sector times. How are their tires working? And if you pay attention, because I'd say they're the only respectable team. I don't think you're going to get good data from Haas. But you're Alpine, they have a good car. They can make their tires fire up. But if you're watching them lap after lap and they're losing time to the front runners and getting passed by some midfield guys, they're the guys to watch. They're your guinea pigs because they pitted on lap 21 on those hards way before everyone else pitted. So you kind of watch that one team. If they would have put on the hards and they would have been fast, or they would have been gaining to the mid pack, you would have said, okay, those tires are good. But with the weather conditions being cold, drops before the race, drops threatening the whole entire race, when rain comes, you want to be on the soft tire because it provides the most grip. The rain will cool off the soft, so it won't have tire degradation. So you want to stay away from the hards when it's that type of weather. So it's kind of overall a no-no, but when you watch their pace from lap 21 on, that's when it should have been clear that the hards weren't the way to go. But Ferrari thought that they had the car to fire him up. So Verstappen pits, Leclerc pits. Leclerc is in front at this point, so he does not get undercut by Verstappen. But Verstappen very quickly catches him, passes him cleanly. Again, they're having great battles all year. You love to watch it. And then coming out of the second to the last corner, Verstappen pulls a 360, okay, spins out. It's a beautiful 360 too. So much power in those cars when they start to spin. They know they can get on it, grab the throttle, and straighten out. So he gets passed by Leclerc again, who he just passed. Perez is behind him needing to pit, and George Russell is coming on fresh tires. George Russell ends up getting Perez with the help of DRS down that straight. Can't get Verstappen. Verstappen ends up passing Leclerc back. Meanwhile, Sainz is out in front, and Hamilton's in second at this point because they're so late to pit, lap 47 and lap 51. Hamilton, meanwhile, is catching Sainz during this whole period. This was the first, oh crap moment. Hamilton is quick. If you weren't paying attention hard enough to see that he was catching Verstappen a little bit in this stint before Verstappen pitted, this is your sign that this Mercedes has speed. This is no nonsense. The Ferrari's not an injured car. Straight up raw pace. Hamilton is fast. Also, Hamilton's on the radio saying that his tires are good. So they didn't feel the need to pit early. They kind of knew by looking at the data on the Alpines, and now by seeing Leclerc pit on the hards at lap 39 and how they weren't working, that they were going to stretch this middle stint here as late as they could to put him on soft tires. So Hamilton kind of catches Sainz, gets within 2 to 3 seconds of him. Sainz pits. Okay, Hamilton runs another 4 lap. Hamilton comes out 10 seconds behind Sainz at this point. All right, so a little reset here. We're on lap 51, we'll say, when Hamilton comes out of the pits. Verstappen is in front. Verstappen's in front. Carlos Sainz, no. Verstappen's in front. George Russell's in second. Carlos Sainz might look like he catches George Russell in third. Hamilton is fourth, and Leclerc is fifth. Leclerc obviously had this middle awful stint. They lose so much time. They have to pit for a third time on lap 54 for the softs, which is the reason that Matteo Benito probably is going to get fired because he can't control his team. As you saw in the race, he walks off the pit wall. It's atrocious for a Ferrari. This extra pit stop cost him the race. This hard tire cost him the race. You're just watching it heartbreak. If you have any idea what's going on, you want to fire every single one on that Ferrari team because they cannot seem to make a call work this year. Verstappen's in front though, big lead. Russell second, Sainz third. Hamilton puts on these softs and just starts putting in fastest lap after fastest lap after fastest lap. He comes out of the pit, says the gap looks kind of crazy, 10 seconds. They confirm on the radio that he'll be fine, he's faster. He mows down Sainz, okay, passes him for passes him for third because at this point Leclerc has pitted and is in sixth place. Catches George Russell, passes him for third place. And then with a few laps to go, tries to run down Verstappen with some drops coming down, but can't quite catch him. But the pace that Hamilton showed really shows that the Mercedes are there. George Russell ran a perfect race. Pretty heartbreaking that he couldn't convert that pole into a win, but I think he's doing everything right. I think he should be holding his head high with how they're doing on the season. Verstappen wins. Leclerc, with that late pit stop, catches Perez a little bit within a couple seconds, but can't pass him. So this extra pit stop right here, okay, because he was on the hard tires that weren't working, is the reason that everyone is fired up at Mercedes this weekend. If you watch in the cool down room after the race, Lewis says something like, "Did Leclerc on the hards?" And Max and George both laugh, a little chuckle, and say, "Yeah," because they knew the strategy was absolutely stupid. No one should have been on the hards that day. But if he wasn't on the hards, we wouldn't have all this to talk about today. So I guess thank you to Ferrari. But the battle at the top 5 and 6 is so separated. Norris has a pretty good race. It was all alone. He starts off on the soft tire. The degradation goes away quick. Hamilton catches him, passes on Verstappen and Perez. But he goes on to the mediums. In hindsight, he as well probably should have went medium again. I think they thought that they could pull off the hard tire too, not seeing what's going on with Alpine. But his lead from the beginning of the race and his spaced out, he kept it. Alonso and Ocon finish behind him as we look at the results. P8, P9. Sebastian Vettel 10th, Lance Stroll 11th. Unfortunately, Lance Stroll was having a pretty solid race. He gets taken out by Danny Rick, who admitted it was his fault. If you watch the replay, McLaren went hard tires again, as they should not have, easily going into turn 2. You can see Ricciardo's doing the best he can to turn left. No heat in the tires. Takes out Stroll. But not a bad finish for them to still finish 10-11 with a bent-up race car. So they're showing a little bit of pace, which is good, I guess, because we want to see Sebastian Vettel do pretty good in his last couple races. But double points for Alpine, Norris 7th, Charles Leclerc 6th position. If you're a Ferrari fan, I don't know if you want to get rid of your head guy over there. I just think it's disappointment after disappointment. We go back to the pit stop chart here. You look at Seitz had 2 pit stops. Both of them were slow stops. The first one cost him the race lead probably. He was going to overcut Russell. Where he came out based on the slow pit stop, if that extra second that is all he basically needed to take the lead. So, yeah, just bad pit stops, bad strategy calls. You have a car that's fast. This week it was reliable, thank God. But other weeks, you have the fastest car, and sometimes the only enemy is themselves. Leclerc driver mistake last week. 2 weeks ago, Seitz's car catching on fire. If you're a Ferrari fan and you're not already gray in the hair, God bless you, because I'd be stressed out if this was going on with Mercedes right now. It just really puts it in perspective too, as they're a fast car, right? They're probably in the top 3 with Red Bull and Mercedes, but the durability of Mercedes and then the smarts / durability, they've had some issues. They've kind of cleaned up the issues a little bit, but it just goes to show you this, like, a fast car isn't enough to win the drivers, to win the constructors championship. You need to have the whole, like, this is very much a team sport, and you can have a fast car, but if your team as a whole is kind of letting you down on strategy calls, on durability, it's gonna cost you. As we take a look at the driver standings after this race, Max Verstappen, okay, that is a disgusting lead. That's an 80-point lead. If you don't know how the point system works, first place is 25 points. All right. So 3 races, okay, at first place would get you 75 points. If you got fastest lap each race, it's 3 extra points. That's 78 points. If Max Verstappen finished outside the top 10 and got 0 points for the next 3 races, and Charles Leclerc won and got the fastest lap in all 3, he still would not have the points lead. Like, it should put into perspective that Verstappen is years of experience. He's young, but he's not new. If you go back and watch, he's been racing a long time, and he's starting to finally catch form. Consistent finishes. We're winning races. He's looking really good, and that's a disgusting point lead right there. Heading into the summer break, which summer break, you would think it's the halfway point, but we're actually a little over the halfway point. So I don't want to say he just needs to send it on in, but some smart races, and he's going to be fine. But because everyone else is picking up their game and Ferrari is dropping their game, Charles Leclerc second. Sergio Perez and Red Bull 5 points behind. I don't know where Sergio Perez's early season paces went. You hear a lot of people say that because it was like a pretty new car with all the new rules and regulations that he might have picked it up faster. But then now that everyone else is picking it up, they're getting a little bit more speed out of the car. The past couple of weeks, he's looked very flat. That race, he was very much a fifth, sixth place car, and he was not challenging anyone. He got, he followed Verstappen through the Alpines, and then that was his placement for the race. But because again, he's not Ferrari crashing out of races, he's only 5 points behind Charles Leclerc. If I was Leclerc and Perez, this would scare me a little bit that George Russell is not far behind. He's 15 points behind. Yeah, that math is right. 15 points behind Perez, 20 points behind Leclerc. And that's with an early season of consistent top 5 finishes without a very fast car. Now that this Mercedes is looking like it has some speed, and George Russell, which is went from, still is Mr. Saturday after putting it on the pole, to now Mr. Consistent, I'd be very worried if I was Leclerc and Perez. Carlos Sainz chilling there now 2 points behind Russell. And then look at this. Lewis Hamilton, 6th place. Only 10 points behind Carlos Sainz. We're only 12 points behind his teammate, George Russell. So, too early to say that Verstappen's going to win, but it looks really good unless, catastrophe hits that team. But I really think this battle is going to be good from 2 to 6. No one really remembers 2nd place, so it is what it is. But if you're nerding out into it, the battle looks really good. Lando's kind of, chilling there in 7th. Esteban Ocon has been running pretty good. 8th. Bottas 9th. Alonso 10th. So there's your driver standings. We go to the team standings. Red Bull, obviously, 431. Ferrari, 334. Then look at this. Mercedes, 304. 30 points behind. Again, the way the points works, 25 to the winner, I believe 18 to 2nd place, and then so on and so forth down the line to 10th place. So 30 points is not that much. Ferrari has doubled DNF this year. So, if Mercedes was to win or, a second or the third, they'd be right there. Red Bull's consistency has them as a pretty good, I believe that's like a 97-point lead they have. So they're pretty comfortable out in 1st place. I think they're going to just keep on doing what they're doing. So I think the battle will be 2nd and 3rd place. You never know if Perez keeps finishing behind the Mercedes that they, Max might have to put the team on his back to keep him in 1st. Big money comes from the Construction Championship at the end of the year, so it's important to look at that. Alpine's double-point finishes lately have been putting them in 4th. But McLaren Mercedes, 5th place, 95, 4 points behind, basically on the back of Lando Norris there. But we love Danny Rick. He'll be all right. Alfa Romeo 6th, Haas 7th, AlphaTauri 8th, Aston Martin 9th, and Alex Albon's 3 points, keeping Williams in 10th place. So it was a great race going into the summer break. It's funny when you watch a race and then rewatch it, all the things you can kind of learn and pay attention. Summer break, next race is, let me check my notes here, Belgian Grand Prix. So it's a famous home of the Spa racetrack with the crazy uphill that, I don't know, if you're a fan like myself, my stomach just watching it, I want to do it, but I just know what my stomach would feel like going up that hill. But that's what us racers live for. So super classic Spa. That is August 28th, and as you look at your calendar today, it's the 3rd. 25 days. Listen, those guys, they travel around the world. They deserve the break. Guess we'll watch some NASCAR and stuff the next few weeks. But yeah, summer break. Listen, we might have some more driver drama. All the driver drama that I talked about earlier today, nothing's happening until next year. So no mid-season firings. That's kind of only a Red Bull thing. So they have in the past they've fired Pierre Gasly in the middle of the season and put Alex Albon in that. But if you're a newer fan and that's kind of all that you know, Red Bull has actually done that in the past. In 2016, they got rid of Daniel Kvyat, and then put in Max Verstappen in a few races into the season at Barcelona, and Max Verstappen won in his first race in that Red Bull car. So that was, I didn't know that until as I'm rewatching back from 2014 forward. I watched the 2016 race. That stat is pretty crazy. That he was doing so good in the sister team, they put him in the main Red Bull because Kvyat was not doing great, and then he wins his first race. So, but like I said, the mid-season firing is kind of only a Red Bull thing. I hate to say it. So nothing really probably will change with the drivers until next year, especially because a lot of the drivers that are making these moves, Vettel retiring, Fernando Alonso moving, they're established vets. So I think these teams know that if they do anything harsh in the eyes of the public, that they're just going to get absolutely crapped on. Because I think the fans have like soft spots for Fernando and for Vettel. So you don't just want to can them in a wrong way, because I think that the internet would absolutely tear them apart. As I'm looking through my notes here, things that I missed, pretty much hit most of this. So yeah, as we go into my segment, all things racing, woo woo, with these awful graphics, like I said, I want to get changed. I also want to do call-ins, so I want to hear from people, see what you guys got to say. So hopefully after the break I'll have better graphics and we'll be able to call in. You guys can ask me questions. We can chit chat about things. But all things racing, you guys know we're big World of Outlaw fans. I say it every week. Like I told you guys, I was going to the races in Weedsport, New York, about a 4.5 hour trip from my house. The World of Outlaws were there Saturday and Sunday. Family friend races in it. David Gravel, so we go see him, hang out with those guys. We love them. And believe it or not, Saturday night, our guy David Gravel wins the race. So it's incredible. When you go to a race and your driver wins, and we got to go in victory lane with them, it was absolutely awesome. So Saturday night, Gravel wins. Schatz finishes second. And then Paulie Colagiovanni, I hacked that up, finishes third. He's a local New York guy. He ran really solid all night, and he's kind of they know that when the Outlaws go to New York, they know that he's a guy to watch out for, because he always runs good. Also, if you didn't watch that race, it was absolutely insane because Sheldon Haudenschild spins out into the infield. He's kind of tucked away in a safe spot. A lap goes by, 2 laps go by. He throws out his hand because they don't throw a caution for him. A few more laps goes by. He gets out of his car, runs to an official. They still don't throw the caution. He walks basically right down the front stretch, no wall separating the track from the infield, gets mad, throws his helmet onto the track, and they throw a caution with about 2 to 3 to go. Now, as a Gravel fan, I did not want to see the caution. David had a 7-second lead built up, and now this caution is going to bunch up the field and make things a lot more interesting than they should be. 7-second lead was a half a track lead. It was so comfortable. But Sheldon freaks out. Crew guy gets into a fight basically with one of the officials trying to take it off the track. Pretty interesting stuff. Green, white, checkered finish basically, and Gravel holds on to win. So that was Saturday. I don't want to say it was without drama. And we go back Sunday, second race. Donnie Schatz wins, I believe, from the pole. Our guy David Gravel started 9th. Amazing race, finishes 2nd. And then Logan Schuchart finishes 3rd. It was a really good. It was the track was pretty slick, and by pretty slick, it was like very slick. You really had to know what you're doing. You had to feather the throttle. Shots of David hugged the bottom and basically the whole track. Schuchart had a different line, but got passed by David early on and couldn't really make that back. But man, dirt racing, 25, 30 laps, slide jobs, hard racing. I would recommend everyone check it out for sure. And because I was there Saturday and Sunday, I did not watch the NASCAR race. I checked out some highlights, the results. Reddick first, Cindric second, Burton third, Gillen fourth, Bubba Wallace fifth. Why would you probably never hear most of those names? Well, Reddick and Cindric have been running pretty good, but especially Burton, Gillen, and Bubba Wallace, because they ran on the Indianapolis road course. NASCAR's been doing a lot of road course. They think it's exciting. I don't want to say it's gimmicky. I do remember the old days when there was only 2 road courses, Watkins Glen and Sonoma, and that was it. I don't want to hate against the road course, especially as this is a show based on Formula One, which is, not an oval. It's a road course. But what's cool about it is that, these drivers, Burton, Gillen, and Bubba Wallace. Probably, Bubba maybe, but especially Burton and Gillen probably don't stand a chance on a normal oval track. Just don't have the aerodynamic package, the engine package. So the road course kind of evens it out and really lets kind of like the driver skill show up in that. So that was that. Also, Reddick getting this win is interesting because he announced not next year, I believe, but the following year that he was going to Denny Hamlin's team, which is like super early to announce a move, and I think it caught Richard Childress off guard. So this was good that you get a win. It kind of shows your team that you're still going to be in this thing, trying to win races, and that's pretty important. So that's kind of all the other racing I got caught up on this weekend, like I said, because I was at Weedsport most of the week. We're a week away from other racing from the Knoxville Nationals, one of the biggest World of Outlaw races of the season. I have no idea where NASCAR is going next week, but that's probably where we'll be tuned in on Sundays to check out what's going on. My brother-in-law is coming to town, who's a big Formula One fan, so I'm upset there's no race this weekend because I know we would love to watch that together. Last time he was here, not last time, but one of the other times he was here to watch a race was the Spa race that got rained out. So we sat forever trying to watch it. He had to basically leave. I don't know if he got to see it, but it was only 2 laps. It wasn't even a race. It was kind of a joke. So, but he's coming summer break, so we're all just going to chill. He said we're going to load up on some graphics. I'm going to try to get my social medias up and running for you guys. So you guys... So maybe if you just want to follow the show and not my personal Instagram or Twitter, whatnot, you'll be able to know what's going on. And I have one other exciting thing I want to work on, but if I make it happen, I will post about it on Twitter and Instagram. I don't want to put something out there that I won't be able to do. So, listen, the show is as I fully believe it's all over the place right now. Like I said, I just love talking about racing. I don't know where this show is gonna go. I do want to get better, getting organized, and like I said, I gotta figure out what I can show for clips, and make a timeline a little bit better. So I appreciate you guys watching this show in the super raw form that it is, and right now it's looking like I will see you if the 28th is a Sunday, the 29th is Monday, and the 30th. I'll see you August 30th, Tuesday 5:30 for our next show. All right, have a good one, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. Thumbs up, listen, if you got a thumbs down, I'm okay with it. Just leave some constructive criticism.